best or nothing. What we have right now is not the best. It is cult worship.
When it comes to the war on cancer, John Morrissey wants a new revolution. This nuclear scientist says the way to win is by closing the gap between the best drug treatments and the critically ill cancer patient.
Right now, that gap is 10 years. And that's pathetic, it's unacceptable, it's unimaginable. When we get finished, it will be 10 days. That's a very achievable goal, and nothing short of that is acceptable.
Morrissey is the founder of Closing the Gap Now, an initiative to get the right drugs to the right patients at the right time. The key, he says, is streamlined open access to big data that would result in targeted, innovative medical technologies.
How would we unleash creativity and accelerate getting medicines to patients faster?
Morrissey and Robert Goldberg of the Center for Medicine and the Public Interest both presented their case recently to a New York City gathering of patients, physicians, and researchers.
We have an eroding global economy because we are spending so much money on maintaining the status quo.
Dr. Robert Hariri is the founder of the cell therapy division of Celgene. He says Morrissey's method of challenging the status quo is the right approach.
He believes, and I agree with him for one, that patients facing life-threatening, life-altering diseases like cancer really expect and deserve the clinical community to deliver them the best therapy. Not the safest therapy necessarily, not the most proven, tried and true therapy, not the one that is most easily to adopt, to deploy, but the best therapy.
But the biggest obstacle in closing that elusive gap is the FDA's current method of trial and error drug approval, clinical trials. Goldberg says they are slow, costly, outdated, anything but patient-friendly.
We're forcing patients to, quote-unquote, fail first, which means they're dying as they're failing on a medicine. That is inefficient and it's immoral, frankly.
Many of the scientists who spoke at the conference understand the clinical trial process firsthand.
Enough is enough. If we can't do this when it's our loved ones, what is the rest of the world going through? And how can we change it?
Colin Hill, Dr. Lee Hood, and Dr. Stuart Kaufman have all dealt with cancer in their families.
One of the things that I've learned at my age, which is slightly over 30, is it really takes all of us. It really does take all of us.
Together with Kathleen O'Connell and Goldberg, they formed T-Med in honor of Kaufman's wife, Elizabeth, who died of pancreatic cancer 2 years ago. This nonprofit will now help give terminal patients the tools needed for quicker access to experimental drugs. And both John Morrissey's wife and daughter died of cancer, despite all of his exhaustive efforts to prolong their lives.
You could not imagine what I would have paid to give you 2 more months with my wife. We've got it in our hands to change it. We don't have to put up with this.
So what is the answer to closing the gap for good? Morrissey says out with old regulation and in with new open access.
What we want is a system. We have 500,000 to 1 million patients each year coming up with cancer. I want to know everything about each one of those patients.
All that patient information could be synthesized with big data, allowing doctors to prescribe treatments to fit the patient, not the other way around. This group says it would officially put an end to the inefficient and ineffective one-drug-fits-all policy. Ultimately, proponents of so-called precision medicine insist a disease could be diagnosed, targeted, and treated much earlier and better.
We have the ability for each individual to optimize their wellness and minimize their disease through looking at these actionable possibilities. We've already begun to acquire metrics that will be the beginning of a metric for wellness for the future.
But according to NYU instructor Bob Tufts, patients will have a pivotal role to play.
Patients have to be willing to assume the risk. Patients have to make themselves informed. If patients don't, they're letting down the entire system. So the patients also have a duty, as do their caregivers, to try to get the information as much as possible. And medical societies, doctors have to be willing to share.
Now Morrissey says it's time for the FDA to adopt a new mission statement. Cure as many people as possible quickly, don't restrict or delay information, and let patients decide how much risk to take. James Pinkerton is a Fox News analyst and editor of CureStrategy.org. He is also recovering from a benign tumor. He said closing the gap is an uphill battle, and cited how the artisanal cheese lobby recently fought FDA regulation and won. It took only 3 days.
And there is no powerful group against the artisanal cheese people. So the FDA came up with their stupid regulation, and then they backed down. That was the end of it. The point I'm getting at is that when politics, for whatever reason, is on your side, life is kind of easy.
While many voices continue to debate how to change an outdated system,
you have to synthesize the message into edible sound bites that they can digest, understand, and then piggyback that with a call to action.
There is no question it will take a powerful coalition of like-minded members of the medical community to close this gap.
Is there a patient revolution about to happen? It's happening as we speak. It's not going to just explode, but I think bit by bit, people are beginning to realize that their life is worth it and that they can take control over the forces that have been holding progress back and turning it into a force for greater well-being.
If it's up to Robert Goldberg, John Morrissey, and Closing the Gap now, everyone will get the treatment they need before it's too late.
We know better. We have no excuse. We understand what's wrong and we can change it. I'd like to get everybody on board. Let's make a vow we will change it. Thank you very much.